Hi everyone, I'm Sherry Brescia and welcome back to the current installment of Holistic Health Counts. Today I have the wonderful great fortune to have with me here Dr. John Salerno of the Salerno Center for Complementary Medicine in Manhattan.
Hi,
Welcome,
Sherry.
Dr. Salerno.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I'll tell you very briefly a little bit about Dr. Salerno because he is extremely unique in his field. He is a world-renowned expert in anti-aging medicine, but he also treats a number of other conditions that are plaguing our society today by using a very unique approach, using both traditional allopathic treatments as well as holistic protocols, creating a very individualized treatment plan for each of his patients, and looking at a wide variety of conditions such as autism, autoimmune conditions, gastrointestinal problems, and hormonal imbalances. So we're going to be talking with Dr. Salerno today about his latest book, Fight Fat with Fat. So it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. John Salerno.
Thank you so much, Sherry. My pleasure.
Over the last 40 or 50 years or so, the government and the typical medical community and the pharmaceutical industry has been pushing that fat is the devil. Fat is the reason why we're fat. Fat is the reason why we have our rates of heart disease and so forth. And at the same time, they've been stressing that a low-fat, high-carb diet is healthier and it's the way to go. Well, obviously, we're not getting any healthier. So Dr. Salerno takes a very unique look at this situation. And I'm going to start by asking you, why isn't fat the devil that people think it is?
That's a great question. They oftentimes will equate fat on the body and fat intake from food as the causative agents for us getting fat. But when we look at the dynamics of food and the way our body will assimilate and digest food, it really all falls back on one major hormone called insulin. So when we take in fat, for example, and or protein, there's very little influence on insulin. So our insulin level stays very level and flat, which is what we want. When insulin levels get very, very high, like with a high-carb, low-fat diet, the body is told to store fat. And that's what makes us fat. And the dynamics of which were really not understood until the last 5 or 8 years, nor appreciated. So by eating fat, we keep our insulin low. When insulin's low, it tells the body to burn fat. So that dynamic, if we can just remember that important dynamic in our body's endocrine system, that's the way our bodies will stay fit and free from fat. So fat has nothing to do with making us fat.
Right. And how about in terms of heart disease? People say saturated fat is the main cause of heart disease.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, when we did research for my book and we looked at, for example, the Inuit Indians up in Greenland, they eat blubber and whale and have the highest saturated fat diet of almost all peoples in the world and had 0 incidence of heart disease or stroke.
Right.
And then we took it a little bit of a step further and we looked at animals in the wild like lions and tigers. They eat saturated fats continually, and they're a relatively close genetic mammal to humans, and they never get heart disease.
Right.
It's since the Industrial Revolution and the beginnings of the wheats and the flour and then hence the sugars that really encroached the diet of peoples, where we started to see heart disease. So again, it's that cascade of events where starches and sugars play a major role in causing plaque buildup in the coronary vessels, again having nothing to do with fat.
Right, right. It's the sugar because it's like aggravating to the blood vessels and stirring up inflammation and so forth.
Exactly, right. Again, when insulin is high, the other dynamic of insulin is that it will allow for increased plaque buildup through inflammatory processes, as you said, through the accumulation of fatty particles like triglycerides and the LDL, which is the detrimental fat in our bodies, that will allow these cholesterol plaques to build up in coronary arteries, in the carotids, causing stroke, etc.
I know it's going to be a very difficult concept for a lot of people to grasp that butter is okay and meat is okay and it's okay to cook in lard. I mean, what are good sources of fat in addition to those that you would recommend?
That's a great point, Sherry. The issue that we like to bring up is that, and with my book, talks about often is that we want foods to be organic. We want meats to be grass-fed. That's very, very important.
Yes.
So that we don't have to worry about pesticides, and we don't have to worry about some of these other chemicals that are really a culprit to causing other issues. So if we keep our foods organic, grass-fed meats, they're perfectly healthy and perfectly natural, and the body knows how to assimilate them. They don't affect insulin. They don't raise blood sugars. So butter, for example, when we did research for my book, we found that butter actually has a property that turns off cancer genes. They're called oncogenes.
Interesting.
So we looked into that. It's called butyric acid. And the fascination of that is we were told to use margarines and these synthetic butters
Plastic
over
fats,
the last 30 years, which actually are much more detrimental. They're hydrogenated fats, trans fats, that clearly cause plaque buildup and cause cancers. And we were told to avoid the product that actually can prevent cancers and certain cancers. So it's gotten so silly over the last 30 or 40 years, but thankfully science is starting to evolve and starting to see the importance of fats.
Well, thank goodness for that, but I think another problem too is that a lot of times the food companies will market their products in a certain way to make them appear healthy, and people really don't understand what to buy anymore. They see, you know, heart healthy on a package of margarine, and they believe what they see on the label.
Right.
You know, so I'm glad the science is catching up, and I think we really need to get out there and educate the people more and more.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, they'll have heart healthy on Fruit Loops, for example. Serious, and they still have it. I mean, the whole system really has to be revamped. The science behind it really is there. You're right. The problem is the major food industries will not back down. They sell too many products because of that heart healthy stamp.
Right.
And there are also ingredients in foods that make them addictive, so that you're continually craving these foods. But it's why society's gotten so heavy and so sick over the last 40 years.
Absolutely, absolutely. You mentioned a little while ago that you know, these carbs and so forth are addictive, but at the same time, the fats also help increase satiety. So, you know, not only do they not pack the fat on you, but they also make you feel fuller faster, and you actually stay fuller. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct, right? So, you know, in my Fight Fat with Fat book, we advocate having, for example, eggs and cheese, or a nice egg and cheese omelet. And by having that in the morning as for breakfast, you'll feel so satisfied that you'll tend not to have a big lunch. Your lunch will be also laden with good fats and proteins, and you'll eat lighter. And the same thing for dinner. And you're absolutely right. That's the other major plus to having a high-fat, high-protein diet.